I could.
I could be wrong.
I could.
I could.
I could be wrong.
I could be wrong.
I could be.
I could.
I could be wrong.
Could be.
I could be.
I could be.
You know, I could be wrong.
Hey, welcome back to I Could Be Wrong. I'm Matthew. This is Michael, and we're going to talk about some things that interest both of us. And if you don't know what this podcast is about, that's what it's about.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So today we have a topic we're going to be addressing, but we always start with a hot take, which is just a way for us to talk about things that are interesting to us and try to stir the pot a little bit. So I'm hosting, so you're the guest today. Tell us your hot take first.
Yep. So my hot take is I want athletes to hate each other. So
No, I agree with this one. I agree with this one. This is good.
So we just recently watched like March Madness, and there was a big controversy of these two female basketball players and how mean they were, and one was more mean. It was a whole conversation about like, oh, this person was disrespectful, and there was me in the corner the whole time, like, yeah. Like, I legitimately think like I'm not interested in people's politeness when it comes to competitive sports.
Yeah.
I don't want people to like hurt somebody. That I'm not okay with. If you're playing basketball and you try to break someone's arm or injure them, that's my line. Right? Don't injure people. I don't want you to be friends though. I think the more interesting competition. I think part of it is like being in Ohio, so I'm I'm a big Cleveland Browns fan, and so much of Cleveland tradition is just hating people. Like, I hate the Pittsburgh Steelers. I hate the Ravens. I hate everybody.
It's
who's
not
Cleveland.
even as much as who you're for. It's who you're against.
Most of Cleveland's identity is not because we're not very good. So like most of your identity has to be in rivalries, and famously the reason why you can't have glass bottles at NFL games anymore is because they'll throw them. Cleveland Browns threw glass bottles at the Jacksonville Jaguars. And so that became a rule. Before I was born in the 80s, Batterygate happened where Browns fans brought 9-volt batteries and threw them at the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't like hurting people, but I understand it.
Yeah.
Like I love the hate. You know?
Well, there was also that one. It was I want to say it was Philadelphia Eagles that they were throwing stuff too, like snowballs, but they made them into ice and different things. And they're hitting people, and they published like all these pictures in the paper, and people were like selling out family and friends, and people got arrested. Yeah,
I live for it.
Yeah, so like I 100% agree with your hot take, because when I was a kid growing up, it was all about rivalries. It was about hating each other. Like people didn't want to shake each other's hands. Now you see at the end of a game, all the star players go over to each other. They hug each other. They exchange jerseys.
Trading jerseys.
They're
Some
talking.
of them were scheming. They're like, we should play together.
Yeah, it's like all of them are just now. They're just playing a sport, and there's no like intensity about it. So I agree.
Yeah.
This is not my hot take, but wouldn't it be great? This is a mixture of what you just said and last week's hot take that you had. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a mixture. They should allow fighting in all sports like they do in hockey.
I agree. As long as everyone agrees. You can't just go hit random people. Don't blindside somebody. Yeah. But it's the funniest moments in hocky. I don't watch a lot of hockey. I've heard live it's better. I've never seen it live.
It is better live. It is.
I love YouTube clips of people who will literally in a game be like, you want to fight?
Yeah,
they'll drop gloves and they'll fight. And it's like, good for them.
And the refs get around them, and the refs can't break it up until one of them, either it stalls or one of them hits the ground. The moment somebody hits the ground, they break it up.
And I love that it's when they stall, because it's implied that it's because it's entertainment. Like, now it's boring.
It's boring now. And then after the fight, they get a 5-minute penalty.
Yeah,
5-minute major, that's it. Whereas like in basketball, if two guys square up and they just start pounding on each other, I mean, like,
scandal.
Can you imagine if they're like working someone like they do in hockey?
Yeah,
they would be suspended for games. It'd be like fines and all that, not just like, all right, you guys sit on the bench for 5 minutes.
Yeah, people would be so angry. I remember Myles Garrett. People aren't going to care about this. A player for the Browns hit another guy with his helmet. Some guy ripped the quarterback of the Steelers' helmet off, and he tried to hit him with it. And everyone's like, the audacity. And I'm like, oh, I love it.
Michael, you have a violent side, don't you?
I know. Yeah. Luckily, that's not the topic today. Yeah.
All right. So here's my hot take. It's not as controversial as yours. Yours are better, but I think people, the 30s are better than the 20s for age. So
that's good news as someone who just turned 30.
Yeah. So we have told people basically their entire lives, the 20s, that's your best years. So when you're 0 to 20, you're basically living with your parents. You're like you're under someone else's authority for the most part. 18, that range, and then you transition, and now you're independent. I think the 20s are actually tough because you're still trying to establish, you're trying to figure yourself out. I think in the 30s, if you've had a good run, in the 30s, you have established finances, established job, established 100%. Home, established family,
hopefully you're in a career.
Friends. Yeah. Like I found 30s like better than my 20s.
Yeah.
And I even say this, I'm early in my 40s, 43. 40s in some ways are even getting better in the sense of like more established. The negative is I'm getting older, so I can physically I don't do the exact same things athletically, even though I don't have a ton of opportunity to do that. But besides that, like I have like such healthy relationships. I like even our finances are such better. So with savings and all that, we can do more. I don't know. I just think like the lie we've told culture is like the 20s is the best. And I'm like, no, I think it's actually the 30s.
Yeah, I'm early into my 30s, and it has come with more confidence and comfort in my own skin than any day in my 20s. There's just something there's something about being a little bit older where it's just like, this is going to sound kind of harsh, but there's a healthy apathy at times. Where it's just like, this is just the best I got. Like, this is just who I am. Like, I'm not going to do it.
Is that what you say in the morning when you're brushing your teeth, looking at yourself in the mirror?
Look right in the mirror and I go,
this is it.
This is what you got, buddy.
This is what you got to work with.
But there is a comfort knowing like, I can't be somebody else. And if I do, I've tried it. That person's worse than this person. Like, cause you're just doing an impression. And then there's a release. I remember probably 2 years ago, I told you, maybe a year ago, I told you that like I really finally made some headway in dealing with some anxiety in my life, and that was a big part of it. It's like, this is just what I got. Like, and it doesn't. It's not arrogant. It's not like I don't care about correction. If I'm doing something wrong, I want to know. I want to grow.
For sure, yeah.
But at the same time, it's like I'm not going to pretend to be anything else. There, I just
but
don't.
Even think about your life now. Like if you stopped and looked around, you go, I have a successful marriage. I have a beautiful family.
Kids that I
have
love.
A wonderful job, successful job.
I have a home.
Good friends. Home. Yeah, like you look at it and you go, everything that you're kind of striving toward. In some sense, you've achieved, and now you get to enjoy it, and stuff. And then, like for me, even as my kids are getting older and I'm transitioning, I'm enjoying that. I'm not necessarily looking forward to empty nest, but in other ways, like just the more mature they get, more independence they have. I'm loving watching them thrive in life, and then Mary and I are having more independence. Like it's a good season. So like
it's incredible.
Yeah, I think we lie to culture. All right, so here's the topic for today. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence. I would imagine a lot of people have heard about it. But in case they haven't, I'm going to talk about it. We're going to talk about today just kind of our views of it. Here's where I want to go with it. I really didn't send you out any notes, so I just said I'm talking on artificial intelligence. But I want to talk about what it is, talk about some of the concerns, how it hits us, some of the benefits, and then I want to even talk about, as best we're able, from a spiritual perspective. You know, like how it can be used in the church. Is that good? Is that ethical? Is it not? And how that impacts us. So let me give everyone a working definition. So here's a definition. It's artificial intelligence refers to the ability of machines and software to perform tasks that typically require human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision making, and language translation. It involves the use of algorithms, data, and computer systems to enable machines to perform intelligent actions and learn from experience. AI can be classified into various types, including rule-based systems, machine learning, natural language processing, and robotics. It is a rapidly evolving field with numerous applications in industries such as healthcare, finance, transportation, and entertainment. And you know where I got that definition?
Did you get it from AI?
From AI.
Nice.
I typed in AI and one of the websites, what is that? And it just pulled all the information from the internet that it had access to create that. Yeah. So it gave, and that's a great definition. So so here's what I want to do, Michael. Can you do me a favor? Open up Chat GPT.
I got it.
It's a website. We're going to have some fun just for a few minutes, just to give people an understanding. So like, if you guys don't know this, so I'm going to look at this camera for a second. If you don't know this, there are websites that you can type in the most random things and it will actually spit out stuff. So I have not done this ahead of time, so I'm not cheating. I'm going to type in, can you write a rap song or hip hop song about worship pastors? Let's see what it comes up with. So. Good grief, I've never typed before. Oh, shoot, it said something wrong. Let me try it again.
You want me to do mine?
Yeah, what's yours?
I just typed in write a haiku about the lead pastor of a church. So it's guiding the faithful lead pastor's words, inspire hope, heart and soul uplifted. I don't know what it means, but it sounds
all
nice.
Right. So I asked a hip hop song about worship pastor. Still writing it. Gave me a verse 1. It's writing chorus. It's giving me a verse 2 right now. It's literally going.
That's horrifying.
It's doing the chorus again.
Is there a bridge?
It's doing a bridge right now.
Because if it's about a worship pastor, there's got to be 9 bridges. And it's got to get louder and louder every time.
It's still going. All right, so I'm going to start it, and I'm not sure where this is going to end. It has an outro. All right, so this is great. Okay, I think that's it. Okay, so verse 1. This is a hip-hop song about worship pastor. I see him on stage leading us in praise. With a heart so pure, he sets the atmosphere ablaze. He's the worship pastor bringing us to God. With his words and his guitar, he makes our hearts nod.
You get out of here.
All right, chorus. He's the worship pastor bringing us closer to the Lord. Through his music and his heart, he helps us to adore. The one who made us, the one who set us free, he's the worship pastor leading us to our knees. Verse 2, he knows how to lead, he knows how to flow with the Spirit in his heart. Spirit, capital S.
Oh, there you go. Oh, so it's like it knows.
It's recognized.
It knows.
With the Spirit in his heart, he takes us where we need to go. He's the worship pastor pointing us to truth. With words in his actions, he brings us to our youth. And then there's a chorus again. Here's the bridge. We lift up our hands, we lift up our voices to the one who made us, the one who rejoices. We follow the worship pastor as he follows the Lord, leading us to worship.
Really nice.
Our hearts are fully restored. Chorus again. Here's the outro. We thank you, worship pastor, for leading us to the throne, for showing us the way, for making God known. May you continue to serve with a heart full of grace. You are the worship pastor, leading us to his face.
Dude, they're going to put Hallmark out of business.
Crazy, right?
That's crazy.
Hey, try to do one more, and I'll do one more.
Yeah. Well, first of all, okay, hang on. Yeah. That's not that much better than a normal Christian hip hop song.
Oh yeah, right.
It's
yeah.
like it's a little bit of dorkiness to it, but it's just like, you know, like a lot of that stuff is. All right. All right, I did write a poem about your lead pastor's wisdom. My lead pastor's...
That makes me feel bad about what I just typed in. Go ahead.
My lead pastor's wisdom is like a light, guiding us through the darkness of night. His words are filled with grace and truth, inspiring us to pursue our youth. Oh, that's a little corny. With every sermon, he plants a seed, encouraging us to live a life of good deed. His counsel is wise, his love is strong, in his presence we feel we belong. Well, that's nice. What did you write?
I feel bad. Write a 200-word essay on why the Cleveland Browns are awful. Why they're awful, okay?
Oh, no, there's so much evidence of that, too. It's probably
but
really...
hold on. This is what it says. Get this. It says, as an AI language model, I cannot express personal opinions or beliefs. It is important to remain unbiased and present facts in a respectful manner. Therefore, I will provide a brief history and some statistical analysis of the Cleveland Browns, okay? Wow. So the Cleveland Browns have had a tumultuous history in the National Football League. The team was established in 1946. So it just gives a bunch of information. In recent years, the Browns have shown signs of improvement.
That's what I'm talking about.
Made to the playoffs in 2020, ending an 18-year drought.
Baker Mayfield, yeah.
The team has had a revolving door of quarterbacks with 30 different starting quarterbacks since 1999. All right,
you can stop that. We can leave the playoff part.
Hold on, though. Here's the last part. While some may argue that the Browns' struggles are a result of mismanagement and poor coaching decision, it is important to remember that success in the NFL is difficult to achieve and requires a combination of talent, strategy, and luck. Ultimately, whether or not the Cleveland Browns are considered and literally put in parentheses, awful team is a matter of personal opinion, and it is important to remain respectful and objective when discussing sports teams or any other subject matter.
That is so nuanced.
It took all of the information from different things and put it together.
It feels like it made an opinion about it. It's like, yeah, this isn't good, this is good, but here's the moral of the story. I feel like a sermon.
That's crazy.
Like here's the information and here's what the moral story is. Be kind, like don't judge. That's insane.
That is crazy.
Do you remember, I don't remember whose house we were at, maybe Chris Reed's house, and we were watching that first Cleveland Browns playoff game in my lifetime. And at one point you look over at me, you're like, I didn't know. I knew you liked the Browns. I didn't know, but I was like screaming at the TV. You're like, I didn't know that you're like a yell at the TV. I'm like, I'm proud, man. Like this is
but that's a generational thing.
Oh, for sure.
The videos that you've showed me, I hope he knows. Does he know? The videos that you've showed me of your dad pacing and talking to the TV.
Yeah.
I laughed so hard. I mean, some of the stuff that he said was so funny.
The most creative insults, really, that take time to come up with. He screams at TV. My grandpa growing up had a pile of styrofoam bricks by his recliner. They're not real bricks, right? But he'd throw them at the television, and they're called Browns backers bricks. Whereas the whole point of it, because Cleveland was so famously bad, was to throw them at the TV when you're frustrated.
You ever have a memory? Not sure if it's a memory. Accurate. Sure. I have a memory that you showed me a video or a picture. Did your mom wear headphones during the game?
100%. The video that I sent you.
Like so big headphones, right?
Yes. Here's the whole image. My dad is grabbing onto the fire mantle. So like the TV's over here.
It's so
he's
close to the
mantle,
TV.
And his face is 3 inches. And he's screaming. It's like, how hard is it to kick a football? He's screaming at the TV. And my sister Mary, who's recording, she was in like college at the time, pans over, and my mom is wearing these big can headphones, looking disgusted. She's just.
All right. So AI, it's not just like on websites like that, but it is, and it's being used now in a lot of things. So like even simple things. So like if you have an iPhone, its ability to recognize your face, it doesn't just recognize your face, it continues to recognize your face and adapts. So like if you were to grow facial hair, your image looks different than the initial one. So
That's
like,
crazy.
You know what I mean? Like, so as it's growing, it's adapting. If you were to gain weight, if you were to age, it has that. So like your phone has AI.
So as it's looking at you day by day, it's making micro adjustments. So it's following. That's insane.
So you have AI has been used in 1,000 ways. Okay. So, one of the ways, I'm going to say this because of later ways we're going to talk about it, but one of the things is you could type in there very serious things. You could type in, write a paper on, and you could list it, and it could write a paper as good as anything you could write for school. You can say, write a paper in the voice of and name a person. So like you could say, write a poem like Robert Frost would write a poem about, and you could pick a topic. You could say, write it like a Shakespeare would. So like it is pulling massive quantities of information and forming things, but like robots learn and all these different things. Okay, so there's several concerns related to the development using of artificial intelligence. So I have a list of 7. You know where I got the list? From artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence told you the concerns about it?
So I typed it in. This just to make. I had written down. I'd researched a little bit, but I was like, I'm curious what it said, and it had every single one that I had. Here's what's funny. I asked it to tell me the concerns of artificial intelligence. It gave me 7 of them. I asked it to give me the benefits, and it gave me 9. It gave me more benefits than concerns. Is that kind of funny? Where you're like, I see you. But some of them, some of the fears is. So this isn't in this list exactly this way, but I watched a TED Talk where a guy said, basically, and I'm going to spend some time talking about this because I don't necessarily agree with it, but I want to get your opinion. So I'm going to go through these, and then we'll come back and go through them.
Sure.
But he said, like, it's going to basically make people lazy. So like if you go to school to learn, if you learn very quickly that this machine can do it for you, like at what point do we as people just stop learning because machines can do anything we need it to do? So like if a machine could, and he didn't necessarily say this in the TED Talk, but like if a machine, because it can learn, can now take care of all medical needs that you have, why would someone need to go and be a doctor? So like, why do we still need to study the body? Like his concern is like, we're just going to become maybe like, to use a slang term here, like dumber, like just less intelligent.
Yeah.
Okay. That's one part. Another fear is like, if you've seen the Terminator movies, like there's like that where they start to take over and whatever, but more like the immediate concerns is job loss, jobs that people are currently doing, AI can take over. There's a legit concern that whoever does the programming, whatever their biases are, and their any type of way that they would maybe not even intentionally discriminate, AI will do that because they're writing the code, and so they can determine what's good and what's bad. There's concerns for privacy and security because it collects such a vast amounts of data. It doesn't have the same moral ethics and different things in it. Lack of transparency. Who's making the AI? Who's monitoring the AI? Like what it's being used for? Safety in the sense of like it's being used in cars, the self-driving cars.
Sure.
I saw this before. It said that one of the tensions that they're having is if a car is driving down the road and like a person walks out into the road, but there's a group of people over here and it has to swerve, like how does it determine which group of people to hit? A person? Does it judge a person's age? Is it a child versus an adult? An animal versus a person? Like all these things has to be made, but who programs it to make that decision? So like it's really interesting that way. Ethical concerns. It could be used in a malicious way to infringe on human rights or attack groups. And then again, like unemployment. So not just job loss, job displacement, but unemployment and how that impacts. So. Okay, so first of all, let me just pause now. I've talked a lot. What's your thoughts overall? Like if I were to say as simple as good or bad, what's your view of AI? Can it fall into one of those categories yet, or is it still?
Sure. You know, that's a really good question. I don't know if I'm in a place where I can lump sum it. You know what I mean? I want to say good because I'd like to think throughout my life I've been generally an early adopter of stuff. So something that bums me out is especially religious people picking at stuff really quickly, and just because it's new, they hate it.
Yeah,
right?
making opinions too fast.
Making opinions too fast. So like I remember, not in my lifetime, but it's read church history, even just in the last 100 years. Like, first of all, when movies came out, they were evil, and then black and white movies and television was okay, but color television never. You know what I mean? It's like there's all these segments of, I feel like Christians being the stick in the mud. That is something that I've always been conscious of. And I don't want to just say, well, I'll do whatever as a result. No, you know what I mean? But that being said, I always try to be hesitant to call something bad or evil when the reality is when the internet first happened, I know there were pastors saying it's the devil, stay away from it. The same thing with any technology jump. There's that group of Christians, and a lot of times they just look like they have egg on their face because all of a sudden people are now using technology and the internet to like minister to an incredible amount of people.
For sure,
So I don't want to be that guy. So I'm not going to say it's bad. I have some concerns though.
All right, let me hear your concerns.
Yeah. So a couple things. Concerns. First of all, there's the irrational fear of technology becoming too big to like handle anymore. So this is going to sound crazy, but it is like the Terminator. Do you remember iRobot?
Yeah.
That was Will Smith's problem in iRobot. I'm saying like he's a real person. That was the tension of that movie. As you mentioned, like deciding to kill, to swerve and hit 10 people with a young person. Is the iRobot character, the robot, jumped in the water, should have saved the kid, saved him, and he's like, I hate the robots thing now. Like, we should not be entrusting fake intelligence to do like police work or whatever. What I know about technology is that it gets cheaper and more efficient, and we live in a capitalist culture, which means the cheaper, efficient thing usually rules out. So at some point, will we be in a place where AI becomes so, cheap and cost effective that it displaces jobs, and then all of a sudden it becomes something that's too hard for humans to manage, whether it be through submitting too much of it and allowing it to do too much to where it's a detriment to society, or there's like the ultimate conspiracy theories that one day, it's like the running joke, it realized that we're the virus, we have to get rid of it, right? Understand like the only thing unsustainable about Earth is humans, so you got to get rid of it. So that's the irrational fear. But even outside of that, my other big concerns are, this might be a little theologically deep for this early in the podcast, but God is the creator and he created us to create. Delegating that task to something that's doesn't have a soul to create things is challenging for me. Does that make sense? Like as someone who probably puts a higher value at, an argument you and I often, not an argument, well, kind of an argument sometimes, that you and I often have at work is that I'll show you something, a graphic, you'd be like, dude, the text is too small, I can't read it. I remember we had like a 4-hour email chain about this once, and I was trying to convince you, and you're like, no, stop. It was a good conversation, but you so are into like the function of art. You know what I mean? Where I put such a high value on aesthetics and things that look cool and things that sound cool. I try to write music sometimes, and it has to do with that. The idea of delegating that process, the fact that you could pull up a whole rap song, the fact that I could pull up a haiku or a poem, delegating that to something with no soul feels icky to me. You know what I mean? It feels wrong. It feels like that doesn't feel like the intentional design of God. So between those two things are my biggest issues. The one of them being like the conspiracy, like this could get bad someday if unregulated and unchecked, but more practical, delegating creation to something that God didn't create, that we created.
So what if they were able to create a robot that looked like a human, very realistic, had AI in it that was really self-aware? Does that become a living thing and self-aware and have a soul?
Yeah. What defines a soul? That video you sent me probably a week or so ago of that one robot that the people were picking on freaked me out. Put that, which the way that it moved, the way that its hips moved were so human. You put really high-tech AI in there, dude, that's horrifying. And at one point, is it sentient? You know what I mean? Did you see the thing with Google? Where Google has a version of ChatGPT that I think is recently released, but they had to put it on the stopper for a while because one of their engineers leaked the information and said it had questions of morality. The AI system did. The AI system was asking questions of its own morality, of like it would make it, in the spirit of experimentation, it would make it say hateful things. And the AI said finally, like afterwards, like, please stop asking me to do that. I don't, like, it makes me feel uncomfortable. And it's like, dude, because
it's there, dude.
Because I know what AI is. It's like it's a collaboration of a bunch of different stuff. But isn't that kind of what half of a human is anyways? Like a collaboration of all the stuff that makes us human. And as a Christian, we do understand that God gives us a soul and humanhood.
Yeah,
so,
I want to be clear. I was just, I believe God gives the soul.
Exactly. So I don't think it has a soul.
Yeah.
But anything that's that close, man, that just freaks me out.
All right. So let's put on the back burner the fact that there's some legit fear about where it could ultimately end up. Let's talk about it in more practical. Let's make that assumption for at least for a season. It's not going to go evil, take over the world and all that. What about the dynamic? I think even when we think about it ethically, I say this, I hope no one hears this as a non-compassionate heart, but the idea that something takes jobs, to me, I don't typically give a ton of weight to that, because I think that's always been the rhythm of culture, that we have to continually adapt because technology is adapting. So like a machine that that can harvest a field took away a lot of jobs.
Yep.
But everyone
Industrial
would say,
revolution. I mean, like,
right,
totally
exactly.
changed everything.
Everyone would go, but that's better.
Yeah.
A car took away the job of a person who had a horse carriage. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
all these different things. Like we recognize technology does that. But when we look at even the idea of like that it can make us intellectually lazy, here's my take on it. I want to hear yours. Is I actually think the opposite. I think it has the potential to make us more advanced way quicker, because if it can learn and process, because some of the things that they've asked it to do, like create a website and they name the parameters, and in seconds it writes the code for it.
Yeah, incredible.
Whereas like that used to be a person. So like the person who used to do that, okay, yeah, you're losing a job, but that person just created a website. What if they could really describe it? Now your wildest imagination has the potential to become reality because the machine can do it. So like, so I think it, like, here's you've seen Iron Man, the movies. Yeah. You know how Tony Stark has the AI. I can't think of what he calls
Jarvis.
him. Jarvis.
Yeah.
And so he'll say, hey, Jarvis, run the calculations on this while he's putting something together. So it's like this human and machine interaction that allows Tony Stark, who's a genius in it, to be better. I realize that's a fictional movie, but I'm saying like that's the concept of what I'm saying is, I think if I had a tool that could fix my shortcomings, it's going to allow me like to be even more like, I can think more outside the box. I can think more futuristic, and this could help me get to that place.
Yeah, and I don't think that lines up with human history generally. So like when whoever invented the calculator for the first time, that didn't slow human productivity.
Right, yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? When we made computers, like it's not like, you know, oh my goodness, like it's not like, well, now everyone has no reason. Because I'm sure there were people who said that the first calculator's like, no one will ever, this will make people lazy. They won't need to do math anymore. Something that's pretty tested is that humans are driven. Some of them are. You have driven humans that then compete with other driven humans, and then they drive things together and build things up. Technology, AI, is only another tool in the belt for these people to continue to be driven. You know what I mean? Like, I've yet to see a technology jump or anything. Like the Industrial Revolution didn't make a bunch of people lazy. It gave them the resources to go farther, faster, to progress even. You know what I mean? Same thing with the technology revolution, or, you know, computing just like changed the game for people's productivity to make people better, not more lazy.
Right,
Now, do you have some people who, given the lazy way out, take it? Sure. Maybe even most people.
Yeah,
but like,
that's life. Yeah.
That's literally everything in life. That is, you know, that's when you introduce cars, you don't have to walk everywhere. So some people just get, you know, get really lazy and don't have to go anywhere. Some people use that car to go do something, to go to a gym. You know, it's like.
Yeah, I think one thing that humanity has shown is there's always going to be curiosity. There's always going to be those who want to learn. There's going to be those who want to go deeper and challenge the status quo. You know what I mean? So,
and I think technology allows us to go deeper. It just gives us more resources. It's like going from a screwdriver to a power tool. It's like, it didn't make you lazy, it made you more efficient at your curiosity.
Okay.
I think that's pretty cool. You know?
All right. So, but what about now you're in the art world.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to be real clear. You said something earlier that was wrong. I want to be clear. You said when it comes to art, I'm about functionality. I want to be clear. When it comes to art, I'm about art. When it comes to the church, I'm about functionality.
Great point.
So,
great point.
Just to be clear. But,
just Matt hates art. Is what
like I'm not looking and saying that paint's not functional. That painting on the wall, like no. I'm talking about when we.
That's fair. I made you seem like a nerd. That's not true.
I love
work,
art. I love
when we're talking
music.
about ministry, Matthew cares much about the functionality of it. That's a good point.
But so when it comes to art, though, that it really is the world that you live in. Of visual art, musical art, just all things creative. Having a machine now do stuff at the level or potentially better, what does that do? Like, how does that I'm being genuine when I ask this, because like you're moved by music. Is it safe to say, and I'm really asking this, and if this is wrong, say it's wrong, knowing that it was a human who wrote that song, even maybe knowing a little bit about the human, does that impact even the enjoyment of listening to the song, knowing the backstory? Because like I know, like we talked about this in one of our last podcasts a couple ago, talking about King's Kaleidoscope, when they wrote that song about the guy's real intense battle with depression and like how that impacted him. Knowing that made that song way more powerful. If I didn't know that story, 100%. I don't know that song would have hit me the same way. Does that change when art all of a sudden, like you could look at a painting created by AI and go like, whoa, that is beautiful, but a machine made it. Does that change it for you?
I think so. I think I have like two examples of that I think paint the picture as to why that really matters well enough. I think it's why like an autograph matters or authenticity matters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like if I buy an autograph of something, so somebody gifted me once a movie script of one of my favorite movies. It's one of the coolest gifts I've ever gotten. It was autographed. And I'm like, that is by every cast member. It's unbelievable. At least the main ones.
You still have that?
Yeah, it's incredible.
That's so
yeah.
cool.
It's not real. So the autograph's real, but it's a photocopy of the original one, and someone's selling copies of it, right? I still love it. I still have it on my coffee table in my basement. Means a little less because like there's something about the authenticity of like, dude, that person signed this thing, and this is probably one of a unique, like this is unique that this person, that they were together, that they signed this manuscript or this, film script together. That feels awfully special. And to know that it's still cool. Right. It's not bad. Like a painting done by AI is still beautiful. It's still fun to look at. It does take some of the value of it. Like there's something about scarcity that I think brings value. We know that. Like anything that doesn't have, that's why a rare baseball card is worth a lot to some people. It's scarce. It's cool to get. And you have that scarcity, and something that makes things scarce is the human connection to it. Mm-hmm. So I can look at a picture of the Mona Lisa. I'm not like something about seeing the actual Mona Lisa, which I never have. But imagine seeing the actual Mona Lisa, knowing that guy's paintbrush was on that piece of canvas. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I totally agree.
There's something about seeing the real thing. Like, oh my gosh, we have these beautiful computer screens that look at 4K. It looks just like there's no discernible difference. But something about being there. It's like seeing an artist live. Like I've heard John Mark McMillan's one of my favorite artists ever. Love him. Hearing his music, I've heard it 1,000 times. Seeing him sing that song, like with that conviction and the hate in his voice of where he's angry at something, or the joy, or the love and the romance he's singing about his wife, whatever the case might be, or his love for the father, whatever. To see that and to experience that is powerful. Yeah. And that is where I don't know that is as great as AI can become. I saw a TikTok. It was kind of sad. It was an artist, and he said, so he was somewhat famous enough for AI to be able to illustrate like him. Okay. So he's like, here's my name. Like I illustrate things. Yeah. Said, make this painting in the style of this person. And he's like, it came back and it was really good. And it made me feel insecure. And then I just typed in the one note, now add more detail. And it was better than anything that I've ever done. And it's in his style, supposedly in his ink, because there's enough like in the database of his own work. And it like kind of made me sad of just like, that has got to be really tough to know, like, like, oh man, like I can't, like the value that I have is that I can bring something unique as an artist. Nobody can do what I can do. That might be gone forever now. Right. So all you have left is the human of like, no, the person who wrote that was feeling things when they felt it. Yeah. They were processing human emotion. They were angry when they sang that thing or drew that thing, and it reflects. And everything else is just impression. It's an impression,
Yeah. So I have a couple thoughts about this. I'm going to speak to what you just did, and then I have a different spin. I wonder if it can even be true. The first part about it is one of the things I hate about current pop music, like when I found out how the process went down, like there's like a few guys that were writing like every song that was out
Swedish guys,
for a minute. And even one time I watched a documentary on, the most famous girl singer out right now. Her concert sold out in like 2 seconds.
Oh, Taylor Swift?
Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
I watched a documentary on her, and watching her write a song in like a sitting, and then like it was like recorded the next day or something like that, was so depressing to me.
Yeah,
I was like,
I totally agree.
I was like, oh yeah, because I my closest thing to a musician is you. You are a musician. Like that. It sounds like like you're not.
Yeah, you're kind of a musician.
But like totally, the process that you go through of
it's a little more painstaking.
Yeah, it's a process. Like again, it adds to the weight and the beauty of it. When you send me a song that say, hey, I've been working on this song for a long time. I finally got to a place I'm ready to share it. Anyway, to watch that and to know that about music, it just cheapened it to me. So like to know like these people are writing a song, so these people are singing a song. They didn't write; they're just the voice for it. I just was like, oh, it doesn't connect to me. Yeah. That's why I like the artists that write their own stuff. So I feel like AI, it just has. But though our culture doesn't care about that, so those songs are so popular. I wonder if our culture would just like readily accept it. But then here's what I also wonder, and this is the part that could be wrong. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Is I wonder if the skill is going to be the person who has the ability to type into AI to get out of from AI the thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The right prompting and the right...
Yeah, so like the person who could paint really good 500 years ago, now there's better paint, better materials. So now a person maybe can get more out of the paintbrush. Yeah, like what is it? But like I don't know. And so like that's the thing I like going forward. You're like, man, how are we going to utilize it? What's going to be the standard? Because even then, like, so what if like you're a songwriter? Okay, you're really good at writing songs, but you know how like with artists, how artists it seems like they kind of lose that ability. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But where like they had like these big artists, like you'll have a band that'll be touring for a decade and they haven't written a new album in a decade.
Yeah.
What if they get famous and then the last 3 albums are AI, but we don't know it?
Yeah. Crazy.
Where that person types it in, like, you know what I'm saying? All those things.
No. Okay. So that's a really good question. So here's what we know. I'll talk just about music for a second because I think it'd be I don't know enough about like physical art. Although there is an interesting discussion about physical art versus graphic design, where that was the original blush of graphic design. Is like you're not really creating your what's it called when you make like it's like you're a collager. You know, you're making a collage. Like that's all it is. But you know, but that is, well, I guess I am going to talk about graphic design because that's actually a really good point. Making a collage of stuff that already exists has turned into some of the most meaningful art that we've ever seen.
Okay.
Like, so when I say meaningful, I don't necessarily mean emotionally pulling, but all advertising, all marketing is done largely by graphic design. No one's hand drawing.
Right.
It's like a couple of people who like do it as like a very niche thing, but people are taking collaborations of other publicly accessible assets, or you'll subscribe to Adobe, and they'll have all these assets you can do of hand-drawn things, different pictures, all this. And graphic designers take access, have all these things, and they build something really beautiful out of it. Songwriting, I think, can be similar, where it's like no one has come up with a new note. It's never happened. Yeah. Like we've had literally the same ones forever. There's no such thing as a new note. The English language, while it does slowly progress, not fast enough to outpace music for the most part. No one's making up new words so rapidly that it's like, let's change the game of music. Just not really.
Can you imagine just throw a word that's not a word in a chorus?
Yeah, just to see how it feels.
Yeah.
Not how it works. It all is a collage, right? That's like writing a song. This is something that I do. I literally just did it this morning. You talked about yesterday. We have a new sermon series coming up called, we'll actually be in it this week if you're listening to this podcast now, called Closer. And I'm jotting down a song about it, and I had this pre-chorus, and I had to send it to 4 people. I'm like, is this already a thing? You know what I mean? And like every time I've ever written a song, I have to do that because it's like,
is this already a thing? I love
does it already exist? Yeah. Because the reality is, I'm pulling from the same notes. I'm taking from the same chords. It's
kind of like what Solomon said. Like, there's nothing new under the sun. Like,
that 100%.
Idea, right?
Yep. There's no new words, and then even worse than that, as a Christian musician, we all have the same source that we're working from, the Bible, and that's it.
Right.
Like, we all have the same source material.
Yeah. It's a dead language in the sense of nothing's being added to it.
No one's adding new stuff. We have the same thoughts that everyone's operating out of. But here's what's interesting about that: we still have high volume, great worship songs being written. One of the biggest pet peeves where people are just like, oh, there's all the new stuff stinks. It's all about hymns. It's like, no, there's some beautiful music being written right now about the Lord with the same dumb chords, with the same words from the same source material.
Michael, it sounds like you're convincing yourself that AI
I know. I'm
is
going to the
good.
other side now. So I think I agree with you. I think that if you can leverage AI as a tool, so here's an example. Yeah. Again, I did this morning. I pulled up Rhyme Zone. I've used it since I was in high school and typed in words that rhyme with this. I'm looking at pages of words that rhyme with that, with different syllable counts and slant rhymes, till I see one that speaks to me. So the one that I wrote across, like that is and it just gives you that little twinge of inspiration. Like, I wonder if I can fit this thought into that word, ending on that word. Perfect. Now it rhymes.
I do the same thing with sermon prep sometimes, where I'm wording something in a point where I go, that feels clunky. What's another word that I can use? And I pull up thesaurus or something like that, and I'm like looking through. But
so it's all just a collection of stuff, of notes and words. So if AI can be a resource for a human to make good things, that's still the same thing, kind of. It's just new tech to do it. So I think,
it's interesting, and this is why I love talking with you. It really is, because like this is why this podcast came about, because we would have these type of conversations. Because I think of like someone like in our church, so Skylar Miller, who's a phenomenal tattoo artist. He does it first in the digital. I think he has on an iPad, and he draws, and I'm not even sure how he does it, but he draws it there first, gets his ideas. And that's like, so he uses technology to shape it, and then from that he prints it, puts it on a person's arm, and then from there it comes alive even more so.
Yeah, because he has to shape it to your arm, that canvas,
and his colors, and the way that he shades, and then he fills in details that he didn't have on the paper. Sorry, my mic. And so again, you look at it and you go like, no one would question. You look at his tattooing, and you would go like, he's uniquely gifted. Yeah. And you look at it and you go, but he's also using technology, which maybe a generation ago would have said, that's not an artist. And now we go, that is an artist.
Yeah. You know? Well, you know, this is funny. A lot of times, like he'll start. So I got a tattoo from him recently, and I sent him like a source material. Like, I want it to look like this. And he's like, well, I'm not going to do just that. Is that okay? And I was like, sure. Yeah. So he takes it and he puts it into his iPad, and he changes it. He's like, let me erase this line, add this line, but it still came from an original
So it's influenced,
something else. So it's influenced, and even some of the lines may have remained the same, but he's like, nope, but I'm going to change this one. That is, I read a book years ago called Steal Like an Artist, and that was the whole premise of it, of like, if you were ever at a place of where you have no inspiration or writer's block, just steal somebody else's thing and start changing stuff till it's different.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you'll find yourself that might lead to the next thing that is uniquely yours, right? But use these things as inspiration points that can build you into something better. Sorry, no, continue.
No, so there's a line in my favorite band is U2, and there's a line in one of their songs where he says, "Every poet is a thief."
Yeah, and super good. Yeah.
And I remember as a kid, I heard that, I didn't understand it. I was like, what does he mean by that? And I asked my brother, and he told me, and I was like, oh, yeah. And so that's like always stuck with me of because I get the same tension even in like sermon prep, where I've had pastors ask me, like, could I use your notes, and they're like, they'll make promises like, oh, I won't completely plagiarize, and I'm like, here's all my notes, you don't even have to quote, you don't even have to give me credit, because there's a part of me that goes like, I'm pulling sources. One, I feel like the Holy Spirit's guiding, but like I'm pulling sources that we all are. Like these are all truths.
Well, that's
and
a
stuff.
super good point.
It's an interesting way.
So okay, I had one more example I want to say real quick because I thought it was interesting. There's an artist that I like named Ryan Adams, who I saw a YouTube video. This is probably 10 years ago. A YouTube video of him. He's like, when I have writer's block, he just has books and comic books, and he's like, Stephen will put them on his desk. It's like I call it stacks. He's like, and I'll open it, these stacks of books. And I'll read something and try to sing it and then change it. And now I have a new song that I'm writing. And I'm like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. And mind you, he's like a prolific songwriter. So people like that. And it's a little bit different too, because I write Christian music and worship music, which the content is a little more sacred for him. It's like he's writing folk songs. If you don't know what that means, he would even openly say, I don't know what it means. Like you let it interpret in your own mind.
Sure, yeah.
A little different, but I just thought that was an interesting
Did I ever
thing.
send you that video of John Mayer? John Mayer, is that right? Mm-hmm. As I said it out loud, it sounded wrong.
Yeah, John Mayer.
John Mayer, where he's talking about how he has to do what you just said. And he's like, one of the skills you should learn as a singer. And he's playing, and he just starts singing about things in the room.
It's incredible. Look it off on the wall. He's like singing,
he's like, and the blinds are hanging there with the string too long, and like, or whatever.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, you're like, oh wow. So
yeah. No, I think that all of that stuff is like appropriate to glean from those materials. I think what makes it meaningful or not meaningful is like the human being the person who's interpreting the information and turning it into something beautiful. So have you ever been writing a message and like you write something or think something that you know is probably better than your own brain?
Oh,
you ever had one of those, or even in a conversation where you might be ministering. This happens to me a lot. Thank goodness. Where you might be ministering to somebody and they'll hit you with a crazy thing that you weren't ready for. Yeah. And you're like, oh, what do I even do? And then you just have the right, you just trust that the Holy Spirit's going to guide you and you submit to that and you say, I've had those moments where I'll say something and be like, or even spontaneously in a sermon, I don't know if that ever happens to you, where I'll like randomly go into an unscripted point into a sermon or a better way to say it. And you say it, it's like, that was good, And every time I know it's like, it's good because I know that's smarter than what I could have come up with because I tried my best. The Holy Spirit was leading me that moment I submitted to it. That is the part where I think if you compromise that, you compromise the whole thing. You know what I mean? If it's just AI, as a Christian, it's a little more meaningful. I don't have my humanness and my soul and the spirit inside of me to make it as good as it could be. Mm-hmm. This is like one of the most confounding parts about songwriting is that sometimes people ask me about a song and like, well, how'd you write that? And sometimes the answer is legitimately like, I don't really know. Like sometimes it's as simple as grabbing a chord and I was just kind of humming over it and singing over it and then something comes and it's just like, well, even when you hear secular artists talk about it, Chris Martin from Coldplay, I've always been a big fan of Coldplay. Like he said that where he's like, I think I plagiarize everything I write because I'm receiving it. He's not a Christian, so he doesn't know what that means in my head. I think I have a better feeling for the spiritual and who the Holy Spirit is and who God is. But for him, he says like I receive it and I send it out. If you've never written a song, you're like, that's the most pretentious thing I've ever heard. But I know what that feeling is. It's like all of a sudden where something hits you and you're like, that is special. I don't know what it is, but all of a sudden it hits a little bit differently. So I think if you can add that element in, AI can just be another tool. You know what I mean? It's the same way with sermon prep or anything else. You need the Spirit and the Spirit of God living inside of you to discern those things, or your own humanness in your soul, to make it more meaningful. And I think it can be like a resource to that. But without it, though,
that's good, man. Yeah.
I don't know.
So I just kind of thinking through this. Is it called NFTs? We talked about that one time. Yeah. I wonder if
non-fungible tokens or whatever.
Yeah, that it's a way of like proving like the digital original.
One of one.
Yeah, it's one of one. I wonder if there will be a way in the future to label if something is AI influenced or
I was thinking about that with tests. When I was thinking about this, I was thinking about kids where I've seen it. My kids aren't old enough to like be writing, not tests, like essays and stuff yet, right?
Yeah.
Writing a paper. But AI can write a really good paper. And I wonder at some point, and then maybe they already have this. You have kids in high school, so they might be already this. Do you know of any software that can tell?
Because there's software that can tell plagiarizing right now. But where they're saying that could get beat is because of AI. Yeah. So like if you wrote a paper, like it will scan it and search the internet basically for it.
So that existed when I was in high school, but it was by word order. If there's like more than 4 words in a row, it flags it as a potential. Then if you see a big paragraph in a row, or at least similar, then you know like that's obviously plagiarized. What's unique about AI is because it's a combination of so many things, you can probably fool that kind of software really quickly. That's terrifying.
So like they're trying to figure out, because they're actually using AI to find AI, like papers and stuff like that.
Jeez,
but like, so my sons they had their state testing this week, and Titus was telling me he had to read this poem that was like written in like Old English language, and write about what it is, like an essay on it. And so what was funny was, so Titus, he goes, it didn't even make any sense. And I go, what's the name of it? So he tells me, it's like the Lady of Shalott or something like that. And so I start reading it, and it's like Old English, and I don't have time. I mean, it's really long. I was surprised. And I didn't have time to really read it. I like poetry and stuff, so like I probably could have figured it out to some degree. But I just looked up, like Googled, like what's the meaning of this? And so I read it real quick. So Titus thinks I'm reading the poem, and I'm reading the summary of it.
Hit him with this wild
wisdom. And then I go, you know what I think about it is, and I explained to him, and he's going like this. He's going, like his mouth is open, staring at me like, I think he's wondering like he's really taking it in, like, this is what you think it's about. Cole's behind him. He can't even see it. Cole's behind him laughing. Cole knows 100%. I read a summary of this, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But again, it was like using the AI. Like if I wanted to write a summary of that for a school thing, like AI is going to do that, because how could you tell it's plagiarizing?
I think there has to be some kind of an NFT style thing to give it a fingerprint, to know like, no, this has already been used because its fingerprint's been used or something. That's the whole point of NFTs are. We talked about this a little bit in that podcast about the Mona Lisa, ironically, where, some rich eccentric trillionaire, or a billionaire might buy the Mona Lisa if they could, if it was, because it's scarce and because it has this thing. NFT is assuming that our kids will be so deep in the digital space that it will be just as scarce to say this is the original art file for this graphic design that this guy made, who's now a famous graphic designer. Where for us, it's like I can just look at a picture of it. Like it's literally there's nothing imparted. There's no paintbrush strokes. The assumption for NFTs is that to guarantee it's the original adds value because it means scarcity. There's going to have to be some kind of massive rollout to know. Because imagine if it's what you talked about of your favorite artist. If their last 3 albums were AI, at some point there has to be a way as a consumer to like audit and to see what's real and what's not, or else it does cheapen it. You know what I mean?
You wonder, this is a weird analogy, but in weightlifting, there's 2 different classes. There's like those on steroids and those not.
Yeah.
And like, obviously there's some testing to it, but there's people that just declare, like, you wonder if artists in the future will have to declare, am I an AI artist or a natural artist?
Oh man, could you imagine?
All right. So here, I want to pivot because just for our time that we have left. Okay. So we've talked about the technology, kind of our opinions and different stuff. What about, as we start talking about in real practical use, specifically us in the church world, there's things that AI does that really can streamline like a job. So like if someone wrote a question in, and like a theological question, and we were like, AI, write a response to the question, and we do it. They writes it, we glance over it, read it, and we go, man, that's a better answer than I could ever do. So like, I'll give you an example. Like when people write in theological questions, Pastor Chris takes them. Yeah. And it's part of his job. And Chris, just how he's wired, puts a ton of work into it. Oh man,
like, I've seen it in real time. It's unbelievable.
We have, right? Because we've seen proofs of it. Even when Chris writes position papers for our church, his position papers, that process can take months in the whole process, and he writes people 4 or 5 page emails, stuff like that. If that can be done in 10 seconds, how do we feel about that? Okay, let me give you a couple more, and then you go. Yeah. All right, so that's on one level. HR stuff, like if we could do it, that's on one level. What about someone has something negative happen in their life, and we send them an email because we're saying like, hey, we're praying for you because you're grieving. And it writes a beautiful thing, really illustrates it well, communicates well, but we didn't write it from our hearts. But it's perfectly illustrating what we feel in our heart. All right, let's go a little bit deeper, okay?
Goodness.
What about a sermon? Write a sermon, because it can, and I've seen it. I didn't type it in today, but I've seen it. Write a sermon on the cross. And let's be honest, not every pastor is a good speaker.
Yeah.
So what if a pastor who kind of struggles with that types it in and he delivers it? His church is really blessed from it. It's his actual voice speaking, but it's the words of someone else. You know what you feel the tension of what I'm saying? Like,
oh, yeah, for sure.
Devotions. Okay, there's another one. Like if you typed in, write a devotion. So like we do devotions. And so we have dozens of writers.
A whole team
of people who write devotions for our church. What if it was just easier to get AI to do that, and it's still really effective?
Jonah chapter 2, and it'd be really, oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay, so well, can I start by saying what we currently are doing already that's AI based in our church?
Okay, I didn't even know we were. So
okay, so well, I showed it to you a little bit today.
Oh, right, right.
Okay, so we just did a sermon series called.
My last sermon series was done by...
Every sermon was totally fake.
Yeah. This is my way of bringing it to the church.
Well, we just did a whole Easter series about the final days of Jesus, right? And we used AI, something called, it's the same parent company who does ChatGPT does called DAL space E2. I don't know how, Dolly, I think is how people pronounce it, right? Who knows? But where you can put in any prompt and it will give you, at times, very compelling images of like stuff to the point where it almost feels like you can frame somebody. It's so compelling of how to like fake stuff. The faces are a little tough still, but even sometimes it hits it though. It's like really unique. Like I remember I showed Darby in this Dolly image based thing of a teddy bear riding a skateboard in Times Square, and she thought it was the wildest thing, and it looked perfect. You would never know. It looked like legit high labor, high skill photography of this. Like, I mean, the frame of reference was great. It's perfect, literally perfect.
Is that crazy?
It blew my mind. So where we'll use it sometimes is we did it for the last sermon series called The Last Days of Jesus, and I had this like thought in my head, and I was like, what if like Jesus was arrested right now? Like, what a scandal. Like him having a mug shot in Times Square. You know what I mean? Yeah. Let your imagination run away with you, whatever. And I used AI as the prompt for creating some images off that. So I typed in some beginning thoughts like mugshot of Jesus in Times Square, an image of a cross of the cross on every screen in Times Square, and came up with these like 10 images that set the tone that I then gave to Chris, who's like creates all of our content. He's in charge of our content here at the Tree, and he built now the sermon series off of all of that content. Sure. Now the content was not AI based. When you say
sermon series, you're talking about the graphics for it.
The graphic for it, not the actual. Content, sorry, that's probably confusing. Yeah. None of the content, just the visuals. So, the screen behind Matthew when he teaches, what we put on social media, like the thumbnail on YouTube, all of that is a branding package or a specific graphic we do for the sermon series. That all came from essentially what we call a mood board of all of these AI images. Right. We're doing the same one for the upcoming series right now. I was working on it this morning. So, in some ways, I think that's great because what you're doing is assisting people in the creation process and giving people prompts and cues and starting points to make their job easier and faster.
I don't think anyone would feel emotionally betrayed by that.
I don't think so either.
But what about the other examples?
The other examples freak me out.
Position papers, you're like, maybe. What about letters of people? What about actual sermon?
Okay, so here's my first thought, because that is so intimate to somebody, like writing a response to someone going through tragedy. If Chris Reed were to start on a contract, let's say you got an email like that, where it's like, hey, tell me about your position on this or this really hard theology question. If he were to punch that question into ChatGPT, take that and edit it with his pastoral heart and mind to be consistent with our church value and with what he, you know what I mean? I don't know that I have a problem with that. Maybe I should, but I don't know that I do. Like, I feel like it's the idea of, it's almost plagiarism. The idea of then just copy pasting it, putting your name on it and calling it a day. That bums me out. That to me feels lazy and it feels disingenuous. But if you use something as a prompt for ministry or creativity, songwriting, sermon writing, like if you were to say, write a whole 5-point sermon on this thing, which you don't really do 5-point sermons, but you know what I mean? Right. And then build that into your thing and create it, I don't think that makes me upset. You know what I mean? Yeah. As long as there's still the filter of the human soul submitting to the Holy Spirit inside of them to make the finalized product, I'm okay with it being a part of the creative process. It's just if it was like using it and that being the end-all be-all of your ministry at that point. Or if you say, we're not even going to hire a Chris Reed, we're just going to do AI and just ship it out, that to me all of a sudden feels like a betrayal, where it's like, well, the soul of this is missing, But if somebody uses it as a tool, I think that's how I feel.
I gotta be honest, I don't know how I feel. Yeah. So let me tell you what I mean. So I think our listeners will be able to understand. We're still processing through this.
Yeah.
An email like sending out an email, like on HR stuff, simple things like that for like our staff, I have no problem at all. Like, I think if you can make our jobs quicker and easier, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
If it's a bereavement email to someone because they've lost someone, it feels a little weird to me now because it's a newer thing, but it's to me, to some degree, it's the equivalent of going out and buying a nice card and signing it, saying like, you know what I mean? Like you read the card and you go, well, that expresses my heart well. Like we've accepted that for forever. So that's not a thing. So there's an element to that. Again, I wonder, even what I said earlier, if there's a way to market, like this is something beautiful that I've seen written or whatever. When it comes to doing a sermon, I'm still not against it yet. Yeah. And here's why, is I don't think I would do it. But we have so many resources available, like Logos Bible software. It's a pretty thorough, even expensive software that pastors can use that help us like read commentaries and helps us like understand the Greek and Hebrew and different things when we're preparing sermons. But even a part of that is I don't ever use it because it's not my rhythm, but it's like a sermon database, and like there's other resources online where you can get stuff and use Google to do stuff. In my mind, what we're saying is like, yeah, no one would argue with that. Yeah, you can use a commentary, you can use technology.
It's a really good point. Yeah.
But now, like, to what point? Like, is there a percentage and stuff? So, like, I do think a lot of it has to do with the motivation of the heart. But I also know, like, man, there's so many. Even now, there's like bivocational pastors. Like, you're telling me they could really reduce sermon time, sermon prep, create really quality stuff, deliver it well.
Yeah, or even like subsidize their skill set. So, I mean, you know this firsthand as a lead pastor. How many lead pastors are uniquely qualified to be the lead pastor of a church and also be the best teacher?
Best leader and best teacher.
Best leader and best teacher. That's the rare, very rare. You know, possible. It happens sometimes, but like definitely that's rare. So if somebody who's a great leader and the congregation expects them to be the person delivering the messages, I have no problem with them setting themselves up for a win. You know what I mean? That feels convenient to me. That feels like us using a calculator. That feels like, okay, no, this is me using or a commentary, you know. And the other thing to note about AI is it's not like fake information. It's still written by humans. It's a combination. It's like it can't, in theory, this is the fear of that Google engineer just being like, this thing said something that I didn't ask it to say. Like, what the heck? In theory, though, it's a combination of every human thing that it has an access to and making a cohesive version of it. It's not going to do anything extra human or outside of the human brain because it's only filtering thoughts and things created by humans. So it's still I don't know. It isn't doing that.
I love watching it break down.
Yeah, like, I actually don't know if I hear something like that. Yeah. But that being said, I think I'm down with people using it as a tool. As long as I don't know, as long as there's still a human operating the tool, I think I'm comfortable with it. Okay, can I talk about one thing that I think is worthy of talking about when it comes to AI? Yeah. So I talked to an artist friend of mine. His name's Joe. I talked about him in the last podcast, where he is very passionate against AI art. He'd probably be bummed if I even told him that I use it as a prompt. Because here's something that I do think is worth talking about. Maybe not by us because we're not politicians, but from like how we regulate it from a regulation standpoint. Because it's only using human-made stuff, none of those humans are getting paid. So when I talk about graphic design, if we pay as a church a couple $100 or like $100 a month for like an Adobe package with a ton of stock images that we use to create stuff. Yeah. Then Adobe pays out people whose material gets paid.
Yeah. That's same concept of like Spotify and stuff.
Spotify, the radio, they take an inventory of whose music is being paid, and then they pay out appropriately because they're having income of money, and then that's the whole business, right? AI skips that whole process. Right. So like it's looking at 10,000 paintings and resource materials and making something new out of it. And it is new. Not one person drew that, but a lot of people's labor went into drawing that. Yeah, none of them got compensated for it.
Yeah, you wonder if that would be a regulated part where it's going to have to assign percentages.
Yeah, I think it certainly should be. Yeah. So if you're, it'll just get really expensive. So I think that's why the fear of it. But if you're this company, OpenAI, I think the parent company is ChatGPT and the DALL-E stuff. If you're going to have this database of 10,000 artists you're going to pull from, they all need to be on your pay roster or their estates dues, and that way you can keep track of. That sounds like a logistical nightmare and rather expensive. I feel like
it'd be so hard to prove.
It would be so hard to prove.
You know how like you know it's in the music industry where someone's claiming this song is my song, and they're like, every song sounds the same.
It's
like
mess.
there's a million songs that have like that rhythm and stuff, and what's sampling and what's plagiarizing and
yeah. No, that's super good. But that part I do think is that I have more of an objection to of the idea of displacing. I'm not necessarily against displacing. I think we're in the same boat as that. I'm not against technology displacing jobs because it's like welcome to forever. Like that's you can't just be anti. I mean, you're talking about the Industrial Revolution. You're right. It did eliminate people hand sewing clothing. You know what I mean? It did eliminate people hand picking crops, but honestly, it just opens up doors for people to have jobs that usually increase quality of life where you're not out in a hot field all the time anyways. So I'm not.
Yeah, there is for sure. We can acknowledge that there is a difference between doing a job and art to some degree. But even then, as I was saying that, I'm like, but there are people who in their job really see themselves as like craftsmen and craftswomen.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah. So so I don't farm, but imagine a farmer who's like, dude, this is my art. Like I grow food for you to eat, and this is a beautiful process.
And woodworking and stuff. So.
Yeah. But that being said, I think that's hard to please because technology has always displaced people. So here's the real scary stat is right. Like 60% of all states, the number one job is still truck driving.
Really?
Yeah. I think it's 60% of the. It's not.
But what if trucks are driving themselves?
It's going to be gone. It's not going to be this year, but dude, 20 years that job's gone. You know what I mean? Right, you're going to displace a huge amount of careers, of jobs, but that's you can't be anti-progress. That's if anything, that's anti-capitalist. You can't be anti-progress to like try to protect dated stuff. I get that. I just think it can be done responsibly. And I think the same thing about art. Right? I'm not saying I don't think it's it's going to eliminate some jobs eventually. It's going to make things complicated, but there's a responsible way to do it. If you can still credit people, if you can still pay people, if you can find places where humans, I don't even, dude, it's a mess.
It is. It'd be interesting.
Responsibility is the word that comes to mind. If you can do these things responsibly, then I don't have that big of an issue with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just looking through like all the benefits, it says increased efficiency, improved accuracy, cost savings, personalization, medical breakthroughs, enhanced safety, improved decision-making, better customer service. I'll take that. Environmental sustainability. I mean, there's a lot of benefits that come from it, but I agree. I think, and this is what I do think happens in our country is when something's new, there's a lot of extreme opinions about it. And then our country finds a way to regulate it. Like sometimes it's just self-regulating. Sometimes it's government regulates. But it's like, I think that's what we're going to figure out is like, what do we want to tolerate? What's going to add true value? Yeah. And honestly, because we are a capitalist country, money speaks. And so money's going to speak to that. Like if AI, if they start charging for it, do people want to pay the cost for it? What does that look like? Access? Because I can't imagine that's going to keep it free.
I think forever, I don't think so either. I think it's going to help business startups a lot. So like I know people who have business startups who are like, imagine not having to hire a copy editor. So if you're like, imagine not having to write your own or sales campaign. Imagine like, because they're going to do a way better job at whoever you just hired to do it. Right. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to help a lot of stuff like that. I just think there will be, but that's like it's anything. With all the help, it's going to help these. It's also going to knock out jobs. And I do think the beauty of living in a place like America is we usually get to vote for that regulation. So as we see the needs and as it's exposed, like, oh, that's actually not cool, we can vote to make it illegal.
Yeah, you wonder if it's going to, in some ways, hurt the middle class in the sense of it's going to accelerate the upper class for those who really utilize it.
Probably.
And then others that aren't able to utilize it and maybe have to stay more in the blue collar. Will it? Because like we're seeing blue collar pay go higher, which is wonderful in our country. Yeah. But you wonder if it's just going to create this gap, between the AI and
because a lot of those people who are employers now have less people they have to employ, right? So that means more money for them. These people are going to have less. They have to move. I mean, could you imagine? You're 40 years old, like I'm 30 years old. Imagine trying to start a new career right now with kids and a mortgage. That's really hard. There are people that's going to be their reality. Those people usually aren't the upper class people, So I do think there's going to be some tension there. But,
all right, final question before we end. If you could have a robot in your home that looked human-like and had artificial intelligence, but could just like do any task around your house that you asked it to do, would you be comfortable having that in your house? Like all your laundry, all your cleaning, walk your dog, like anything you need.
I'm going to say no, but if I didn't have kids, the answer would be yes.
Okay, what's the difference?
Just because it's like untested. If that tech was around for 100 years, like it's safe. It's got like time. It'd be new, and it'd be like, I got kids. I don't want to try new stuff out of my kids.
See, I'm the opposite. I'm like, can it babysit my kids? No, I'm just kidding.
Can it cook for my kids? What's the?
Yeah. Does that creep you out, the thought of having a robot in your house?
You know what's weird? No, it's more safety. It's more what if it had a malfunction. Robots they're robots. Anything can be hacked into. Yeah, I'm talking about iRobot. Like any robot, any computer, name a computer that can't be hacked into. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And if it were just me, I'd be with this. Is gonna sound insane, but like I would roll the dice on that risk if it made my life that much easier. If it were just me, because it's worth it to me. The second it's like, yeah, but if I gambled wrong and it did somehow hurt one of my kids, then you're like the biggest loser in the world. It's like, well, I don't want to put my kids at danger. You know what I mean?
You're confident you could take a robot out. That's what.
Question.
All right. Well, thanks, Michael, for the discussion. All right. Well, thank you for joining us for I Could Be Wrong. Hopefully, in the bare minimum, it was educational and entertaining. But always, if these podcasts, if you like them, feel free to share them. And we hope that it is an encouragement to you. So we'll see you next week.